and hi and congratulations and all that fun stuff.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. It's interesting to watch someone sort of newer in the game act against bigger stars and with a bigger a big name filmmaker, just because it's almost you also wonder like, oh, jumping to the head of the line, like how'd that happen? So
Yeah.
like just on your end, like I'm sure you said it a lot of times, but how you got the role is something that interests me. And then just when you're going out for like a Ron Howard movie, how interested do you get in his work? I'm sure like, some of them you were aware of, but I'm sure you go and you look, oh, he's made a lot of movies. Like, hang on. How deep a dive do you get to get a sense of what he does, or do you sort of trust that like I've read the script, I have an idea of what the movie is, and I'm gonna trust him to do his job?
Yeah, well, I think that last little piece that you said right there, that definitely is important for me, is trust, within my teammates and my coworkers, of course, for sure. Is having that certain level of trust, but I definitely did do, a fair amount of research
Yeah.
leading up to the role for sure. And especially during the audition, during the whole auditioning process and kind of starting from there, I guess it was one of those things where it was a role that was just kind of so perfect
Mm.
at the time, and it sort of just came down the pipe, and I fit the job description
Yeah.
basically. I was a kid with brown hair and blue eyes who had kind of like a baby face, which I think was actually on the actual description thing. Um, and I fit the role, I guess. So they called me back for a second callback, and I rewatched my first tape. I made some adjustments and went from there, and I guess they liked me, or Ron saw potential, for improvement maybe. And they said, all right, let's give him a director's callback. So then that was sort of the big thing, was me and my dad, we went up to New York for a director's callback with Ron. And leading up to it, I knew who Ron was. I've seen, the Andy Griffith Show and Happy Days
Yeah.
and reruns on TV and stuff like that. So I was definitely well aware who he was. Given, I watch a handful of movies definitely, and I am pretty in tune with, you know, old school cinema, I guess, but I wasn't fully understanding of Ron's impact on the sort of media world, I guess,
Yeah.
leading into it. But I definitely did understand his reputation in one way or another. And then going into New York, me and my dad were actually passing by the building, and we come by the building, and I see Ron standing in front of the building in his baseball hat. And he just sort of locks eyes with me and walks right up to me, and he goes, "Well, hi, Owen. I'm Ron Howard. Nice to meet you." And I'm like, "Hey, like, how's it going?" And he's like, "It's good, it's good." He's like, "You're on my list for tonight." And I'm like, "Oh, geez, I'm so excited." And he's like, "Oh, well, you should be." He's like, "And make sure you're memorized." And I'm like, "Okay," you know. So I mean, that was completely out of the blue,
Yeah.
and sort of sent me for a loop. But I guess things happen for a reason, maybe. So then that whole spiel happened, meeting Ron in New York. And my third audition, I actually don't get to talk about this a lot, but I mean, I worked with Ron on that director's callback for several hours.
Yeah.
And it almost felt like a working day with him there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, we sat there, and he gave me a scene to do a cold read on.
Mhm.
Um, and he said, "Could you try this for me?" And I was like, "Sure." And it was the pool house scene when my mom tries to kill me.
Yeah.
Um, and he gave me that to cold read. He said, spend 5-10 minutes with it, and then we'll just sort of hit it from there. And I'm like, okay, cool. But yeah, I worked really extensively with him, and I guess he ended up liking me, and we shot the movie.
Yeah.
Um, and then leading into production, I definitely sunk into the character. Um, a lot more than I did for any of the auditions, for sure. I listened to the book a lot. I listened to the book all the way through. Um because JD actually reads the book
Mhm.
on Audible. So I listened to JD read the book, and that helped me tremendously sort of get, I mean, like sometimes like talking like to people like this about the movie, I sort of like fall back into like some of like the nasaliness of the accent,
Yeah.
which is kind of funny. But that helped me tremendously with the accent, listening to him and picking up on his sort of speech patterns.
Mhm.
Um, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of watching home videos. Like the production team sent me a ton. I mean, it's almost like I'm violating this family's personal life. Like they sent me a collection of these home videos to watch of JD when he was my age and a little younger and a little older and stuff like that. And that helped tremendously to sort of step into the physical realm of the character a little bit more, to sort of see how JD walks, how he talks, how he interacts with people, yada yada yada. And then I also did my fair share of sort of like family soul searching in a way. Not to sound too deep, but my family has sort of undergone some very similar processes in life that JD's family has, and that's sort of why the role became so special to me, because I felt like I was representing my own family in a way. And I spoke for multiple hours with my grandparents on both sides, my mom and my dad's side, who both have very similar stories to tell in one way or another. My grandfather on my dad's side actually being an immigrant from Hungary, Budapest, and sort of coming over to America in like in the 70s to create that American dream or
Yeah.
whatever that may be. And a very similar story with my grandfather on my mom's side coming down from the coal regions actually to sort of start a family. And yeah, I guess you could say that the story hit pretty close to home in that way, just in the way that my family's lineage was able to relate, and it really helped me to sort of open up to my family members in that way, so I could sort of connect myself even further to JD.
Sure. It is interesting when you think about, going out for a role, you assume there's X number of people who want it, and then you cut out however many when you get to every other round. But I'm sure it goes through your head when you're sitting, like you said, almost like a work day with Ryan, going, he's wasting a lot of time on me if he's not going to cast me. This is probably a good sign. Like I'm in a good spot. And then you also, like you said, have the family stuff. Like you got to have in the back of your mind, like, okay, this has a chance to really work. Like, I'm not just hoping that this is going to work out. Like there are actually like tools here, and even for me, it's just funny when I hear you, like everyone sort of who works with Ron Howard seems to have the voice of him like very
Yeah.
quickly come out when they talk. Like I remember Tom Hanks doing it inside the actor's studio, talking about like he was still like sort of his first movies were with Ron Howard, and he's doing a scene, and I think it was like Splash or something. He like comes up from the water like, that's great, but we want more wonder. Like he just like everyone like falls into it because you also spent time watching Happy Days. Everyone just imagines that voice of like, okay, add like a little nasal and like just add a little gray hair and like you got him. There's something about like that like comforting presence also being there that probably has to help him.
Oh yes, I mean 100%. Ron's voice isn't the kind of voice that you want to tune out at
Yeah.
all. He's one of those guys that's definitely makes you feel 10 times better on set whenever he's working inclusively with you.
Yeah, it seems like he's the guy who, like, even if the scene was bad, is like, that was amazing.
Yeah.
Let's just do it one more time. And at a certain point, you have to realize, like, he thinks everything's amazing. Okay, he's definitely lying, but I love the encouragement. There's,
I mean, yes, every single day it would be that was great, that was great. Okay, all right, one more time. We're just gonna try it from the top. We're just gonna go 1, 2, 3, action.
I mean, it is when you think about like a David Fincher who does like 80 takes of something, you're like, you don't imagine that every time he's like, that was amazing, but also wrong. Let's keep going. There's something about hearing the comfort of, okay, I like what you're doing. All right, makes you want to
Right.
work more for it. In the same way that I got to imagine it helps when you know that your scenes are going to be against like Academy Award nominated actresses and people who like by any metric know what they're doing. Like this is,
Yes.
they'll say it's hard and that this was a challenge, but they know what they're doing. Like they are coming in with the tools, and this is one of 5 jobs this year. Like there's a process they're ready to go with. So I got to imagine that is also like very helpful for not feeling intimidated. I'm sure they work their best to make you not feel that way also. But no matter what, there's got to be a moment of like, you're not a real person. Like I've seen you in movies. That's not how this works. Like you don't eat a sandwich.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely weird at first, you know, just because I remember actually whenever I was on the sound studio,
Yeah.
in Georgia, whenever I was on the sound studio, we were shooting like concept photos, for stuff, and that was the first day that I met Amy and Glenn. Is I saw Amy and Glenn sort of walk on the set, and it was almost just like they had this like, you know, ring around them of
Yeah.
light, and it was just like, wow, like here they are, you know.
Yeah.
And it was just it was really really special. But what was really neat is that, you know, they're so incredibly welcoming.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely nothing I could ever say bad about either one of them, because they are so just, they to do nothing but lift you up on set. I mean, it sounds like it sounds like I'm, you know, blowing smoke, but I'm really not. Like they're just these two women who are so strong, you know, mentally and physically, who can just sort of carry the team, you know.
Yeah. The physical you learn too, because they sort of rough you around in the movie too. Like
Yeah,
like
yeah,
Amy especially, like beat the crap out of you for lack of a better word. But even Glenn Close, like she, like her character is a physical character, like moves you out of the way. Like, well, not even just her words, but like actually
right.
like her body will do that. So it must that might. I wonder if that even like helps because you're like, okay, they touched me, like okay, they feel like a person, like okay, that little bit, or even just like a random conversation, like oh they don't like this thing too, or they're tired, whatever, a little bit, because until that, like you said, they do have like an aura around them. Like I'll go to these events back when
Yeah,
the world existed, and their Q&As, and like they'll do meet and greets, but at the same time you're still like you're like I don't the concept of you as a person is weird until you have that moment where you're like, oh, they also like bacon or whatever
yeah,
nonsense, whatever thing like establishes them as a human being. So what
yeah,
it what did you guys do to have a bond? Because obviously it's a dysfunctional family, but it is still there needs
sure.
shorthand.
um well, Ron was really incredible when it came to orchestrating stuff like that. I mean, even with Gabe, you know, like me and Gabe spent so much time together, because I mean, we were the first two people there as far as the
Mm.
cast goes during pre-production. And Ron just had he had, you know, so much stuff set up for me and Gabe to do, to sort of create this, you know, one um sort of character with the evolution in
Mm.
between, obviously. And Ron was really really good about orchestrating stuff with that. But then whenever the rest of the cast showed up, you know, Bo, Haley, Glenn, Amy, everybody, we spent a lot of time together. First, we went to Ohio. Ron set up a plane for us to head to Ohio. He actually came with us, and we went to Ohio. And we stayed at this hotel, and we went out to eat dinner, and we spoke with some of the family members, which was really really nice. And we got to sort of have this little, you know, just moment, I guess, of bonding, just between us and the family, where we were sort of all still kind of getting to know each other. So it
Yeah.
was still in that very, very raw stage. But it was incredibly helpful, I found. And then during the first week of production, so that was pre-production. And then during the first week of production, um, Ron had set up this B&B, like deep in the, I think we were in Clayton. Yeah, Clayton.
Yeah.
He had set up this B&B like deep into Clayton, into like the sort of like mountain sort of region, I guess. And he had set up the spot for us, and we all slept there, and it was just us. But we sort of developed this family dynamic, because we were all sort of living like the first week in this big house.
Yeah.
And at 5 o'clock every night, we would all go downstairs and sort of congregate to have family dinner.
Yeah.
Um,
That'll do it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and like I said, it was so early in production. I mean, we were literally shooting the first couple scenes on the first week, and we were living together. I mean, we weren't just staying at the same hotel, you know, where there's like 1,000 rooms. We were living in this, you know, little cabin in the woods, eating dinner together at 5 o'clock, which was, you know, pretty crazy.
Yeah. I'm sure and then you get to just text your friends, like, I'm living with Amy, and not a
Yeah,
big deal. It's a thing I'm doing. How's math?
yeah,
It's and then just fast forward. We'll get back to that part, but like when you make the movie, obviously, you have a sense that it turned out well, or at least that you're proud of what you did, and you move on, and obviously want to get more roles, and you are on a show right now. So like things progress, and then everything that's about to come out happens when the world sort of ends. Like how do you deal with that? Of like, because you obviously like have to, you tell people like, oh God, I'm in a Ron Howard movie. It's coming out. Amy Adams in it. Glenn Close is in it. It's based
Yeah.
on this book everyone read. Like it's Netflix has like everything about it suggests this is gonna be a big deal. And then also I'm gonna be on this show that's like a big time like television series. Like you're going to be able to see me in things. And then right as that's getting started, you also hear like, oh, no one can ever do anything anymore. And
Yeah.
you're sort of stuck at home. Like, what for you? Like, how did you also deal with that? Because it's still like the work exists,
Sure.
but at the same time, I'm sure you're like, going out with it and going to like the premiere and all that stuff. I'm sure it had to be something you wanted to do.
It's very tough. I mean, if there's one word that I could kind of use to describe it, it would be frustrating.
Yeah.
Just because this is really, I mean, if I'm being honest, this is really the first time that I can sort of say to people like, hey, I have this coming out.
Yeah.
I have this coming out. And I'm like, I really feel for the first time in my life, like sort of this, like sort of this actual actor who sort of has this presence, which is, really incredible for me to be able to say, at
Sure.
such a young age. But all in all, I mean, I'm incredibly grateful for the experience, and this probably sounds cliche as well, but I'm incredibly grateful for the experience that was given to me during the actual shooting of
Yeah.
both of those projects. Just because um, they sort of fell at perfect times, really. I mean, if we would have shot Hillbilly any later, COVID was just sort of starting to come out, and then Flight Attendant, we were able to sort of squeeze that in and make that all work, which was really, really, really incredible on that whole productions half a thing. Um, but Hillbilly, being able to shoot that a summer ago, not this last summer, but the summer prior to that,
Yeah.
being able to shoot that a summer ago and, do it with absolutely no faults in the shooting process at all was just something that I'm so incredibly grateful for and that I wouldn't trade for the world, because I mean, it was literally the best acting experience, I think I'm going to have for a really long time.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
and I'm
an
sure.
incredible director, two incredible lead actresses to work with, and just such a solid production team. I mean, absolutely no complaints from there.
Yeah. And has to stay in the back of your mind as you're like stuck at home going like, I'd love to be going out on auditions, but they can happen over Zoom. I can
Yeah,
get in some Xbox time or whatever. Like everyone had their thing that they did to like cope. Like Taylor Swift put out 2 albums, so she made us look
yeah,
bad. But like it is interesting that like some people got very busy and some people did absolutely nothing, and everyone
yeah,
had to sort of find their in between. Like I know I didn't like I started a website, so what a time to go into business. But like you at the beginning, you're like, I guess I'm gonna read more and I'm gonna finish that video game I didn't finish. And like you don't end up doing any of that. You kind of just like live your life. So like
yeah,
for you, like I'm old. Like it's easy for me to do nothing. Like I get sad. Like Lisa and I have texted about it, but like, I want to be outside, but I'm used to being lazy. Like for you, like this is the like, it's not as normal to be like, I'm gonna be home all the time. Like it's
right,
cliche also, but like parents also be like, go, leave, like go, like come back later, like go play, go do things. Like that's a thing you still do. And to not be able to do that, like left to like, I guess be with yourself more and like be internal. Like it's good for an actor, but as like just a young man, like how do you cope with that? Because that is like a weird experience, not normal.
yeah. It's very. I mean, it's just all in all a different time, in
Yeah,
every single aspect of my life for sure. Um, but I would say, definitely the whole self-discovery thing has been something that I've sort of been trying to do, not just internally, but also finding things to occupy myself with that I
sure.
didn't really know that I liked before. Because like, yes, like whenever sort of, we first went into lockdown, it was like, oh yes, like I can play Call of Duty Modern Warfare until 3 o'clock in the morning now. Like, let's go. But
Exactly.
it was that sort of thing. But then sort of as the course of COVID went on, I found that really wasn't working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of playing Call of Duty till 3 in the morning, and I found that I was sort of developing some really, really unhealthy habits.
Yep.
And
Same.
I was like, I think there needs to be a sort of change in plan here. So what I ended up actually doing is I ended up sort of picking up weightlifting, and sort of working out and stuff like that, which I sort of fell in love with really, really fast, just because I wasn't doing, I mean, I wasn't active in any way. I had played hockey before that, and I was sort of, you know, dabbling into some other sports or whatever, but I didn't have that sort of physical fitness fix anymore. And it was just Call of Duty until 3 in the morning, and sitting in front of a computer screen, which, some people really like to do, and can
Yeah.
keep doing that. And that's great. Like, if that's what you're into, then go for it. But I was just sort of finding for myself that I was sort of just digging myself into this hole that I didn't really see myself getting out of without sort of pushing myself out, and sort of pushing my mind, I guess, a little harder than it was being pushed at the time. So I ended up taking up working out, with this family friend of ours who has this gym locally, but of course he had to go into the shutdown
Yeah.
with that whole thing happening. But he basically said to me, he was like, nobody's working out at the gym right now. Like, do you want to come in and like get like a little workout in or something? And I was like, sure, let's do it. And then it was working out once a week, then it became working out twice a week, and eventually it evolved into working out, twice a day.
Yeah. Sure. I have nothing else to do. Nothing's stopping me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Exactly. I mean, I had no school. I had no friends to hang out with. So I was like, I guess I'm just going to go to the gym 6 days a week, twice a day, and, lose weight.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I decided to do. 35 pounds less later.
Yeah, I was about to say, because people can watch the movie and then see you and realize, like, oh, we like obviously like age will do it, but also there's a definitely different body there, which is also just it's a sign of like dedication, because it's easier to play Call of Duty. Like I had my wave of just like, I'm gonna play I play the story mode in the game, so I get bored too easily.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I did that already. Maybe I'll play the one mission twice and I move on. But it's so much easier to do that than to get on my stationary bike or to box or to go walk on the boardwalk or whatever my exercises were over the summer. Because
Sure.
And like prior to this, you had an excuse, because you could be like, well, like I have homework, or I got to watch this, or I got to go to this, or I'm going to go out and eat with friends. Like whatever thing you could do could take the place of it. But now you're like, well, I could do something else, but it will also be at home. So like this is right here and will be good for me as opposed to bad. And then if I want to eat a whole bunch of candy, I can. Or if I want to play Xbox, I can. And I can like not feel like crap about myself. So there's something about that, which is going to also serve you like going forward when someone's like, okay, here's a role.
Oh,
great.
yes.
In 6 weeks, can you drop 40 pounds and gain 3 inches? Like, I don't know about the height, but I can do the exercise stuff. Like, we'll figure it out.
I'm gonna hang from the ceiling a little bit and try and stretch my legs out.
Yeah, you're like, you want it? I'll do it. Like, don't not cast me because of this. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Something. I'll do something. I mean, that definitely played a contributing factor too. Just because I didn't really want to fall into any sort of specific category of character that I was playing. So
especially early on.
Yeah, definitely. And I sort of figured that if I developed this sort of work ethic and discipline now, then that would sort of, benefit me a whole lot for anything that I really wanted to do in the future in terms of acting or directing or whatever.
Oh yeah, then they'll be looking at like the tape of your performance as opposed to, oh, he looks like who we want. Like this was the first time out, so looking like what they wanted helps. But 2 years from now, also you're not going to look like that. You're not going to look like you do now 2 years from now. Like that's the the name of the game. It's a real feather in the cap to be able to be like, well, don't worry about what I look like. Look at how I deliver the scene. Look at how I take a punch from Amy Adams. Like this is the thing that you can use in a movie, like or a TV show, or like you said, if you want to go into directing. Like, look, I have the experience of working with actors. Like I had an actor who became a director direct me the first time out. So like I understand how to talk to people.
Exactly.
Once upon at some point in the future, it won't hurt to have those contacts when if you do want to make something, to be like, hey, Amy, remember when?
Yeah.
Remember when you said if I ever needed anything, I should call you?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Oh.
I think we've actually had that conversation already. So I think I might already be out of the get out of jail free card.
She must have been really concerned about that scene then. If she was like, I'll do whatever you want, like right after the fact, don't worry about it. Because I remember I watched at the virtual premiere, they had a Q&A with her and a bunch of people. And she did seem like very like, I wasn't really keen on that scene. Like I zeroed on it very early. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And she was like, seemed like it got even harder meeting you. Like, oh, I like him. Also, he seems like really into me doing it. Like doesn't make it easier, but how do you guys like figure out a scene like that where you have to like very clearly express the exact opposite of the scenario? Like obviously it's safe and you guys know each other and you don't feel like you're in danger. But for all the money, it has to feel like she's abusing you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, she's obviously not, coming at me full force like I'm in the ring with Muhammad
Yeah.
Ali or something. But I just think it's important feeling safe whenever you're doing stuff like that. And I'm surrounded by people that I had been, and I think this was, in part also by Ron in terms of scheduling and stuff like that. But I think I felt very comfortable in the atmosphere that I'd been in at the time, just because we had been shooting for several weeks prior before that. And I knew the cameraman that would be in the car with us.
Yeah.
Me and Amy had spent, a lot of time together shooting scenes, obviously, because, most of the movie I'm shooting scenes with her. And obviously Ron, I knew that Ron wouldn't put me in any situation to jeopardize my safety or anything like that. But also, I mean, like, I sort of put myself in a mind frame where, I mean, I don't know how to explain this without sounding like I'm some sort of, like a method actor.
Yeah.
But I was definitely very much in a mind frame where I was ready to sort of take whatever Amy had to throw at me,
Yeah.
for the purpose of the scene, for sure.
Right. You had to, the character is not the first time that character has experienced that. So it's not,
Right.
like for you, obviously you have to find that moment of like, okay, this should seem bad, but also familiar, where everything in your normal experience is like, this is not how adults react. Like, this is not how a family works. So that, yeah, like, I mean, the product speaks for itself. Like the scene is great in all the like worst ways. But yeah, there's something about like figuring out that happy medium of like, this is pretend, but also I need to find the realism to still be acting.
Yeah.
Like when you watch a movie, are you like, obviously you're watching the performances in a way that, someone who's not an actor doesn't, just because it's what you do. Same way I'm sure Ron watches a movie and is thinking about the camera, like, oh, I might have put it like just because that's how his brain works. It's just how he's wired. Like, when you watch a movie that has adult actors and child actors, do you like focus on either one or the other? Because it is like, that person may have had the role you could have had, 3 years ago or something like that. Or are you still looking at and going, oh, Tom Cruise, just because that's the main character?
I think if I'm going to watch a movie that I sort of build a lot of hype around in terms of the story, and investment into the story, then I watch it as objectively as possible, just because I want to enjoy it for the hype and for the investment that I've already put into it. But I think if I was watching something where I was sort of like with like a friend, maybe, I mean, and I hate to do this to my friends, be that annoying. Oh, well, he's an actor. Of course, he's not going to like the performances. Like, I hate to be that friend. But I think if I were watching it with like my family or a friend or somebody, and they're like, hey, like, there's this great movie, you have to check it out, then I think I would watch it a little bit more for the purpose of performance and being like, I don't know if I would have done that there, And there are definitely moments where I catch myself watching like a new TV show or something, and I'm like, the acting was just not good in that. I mean, there was so much that was done wrong. I mean, and not that I'm an Oscar award-winning actor, because I'm not. I mean, of course, but I do think there is something to be said about seeing what's behind the camera, and stuff like that, and just understanding what the scenario is.
I mean, a lot of times it's just, I think it's wanting to be there and enthusiasm. Like I think that's where you see sometimes that kind of thing where you're like, that wasn't good. Like, nobody sets out to make a bad movie or a bad TV show, but sometimes you'll see like an actor or an actress who, like, they're there because it pays well, or it's there because they just needed to do something, and you can see like there's something in the eyes of like, you're bored, and how am I not meant to be bored if you're bored? Like, there's like you can watch a really bad movie where everyone's just giving it their all, and like it just goes the complete opposite way, and that's where you get like sometimes those it's so bad it's fun. Because nobody wants to make a bad movie. Like, no, like everybody in the room is going for it. Nobody is like, they might know like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing, but they're still like, I'm an actor, I'm in a movie, I'm gonna give a shit, And there are, you'll see way bigger actors who, will be in something where you're just like, why, So that's way more what I think is good to be able to point out. Just like, look, like. They're waiting. You could see they're waiting until lunch. he's just looking at his mark because he doesn't care. Like he's just like trying to get through the scene. Oh, that shot's from behind because it's not him. He's gonna be there for a weekend for all the close-ups, but other than that, it's some other bald guy or whatever. That stuff you can point out, and that's definitely like not being annoying.
It is certainly easier to identify, sort of faults in the project. I mean, not necessarily faults, but just sort of, just the scenario and sort of what's going on during each shot. It's definitely easier to identify that for sure.
And especially for you, because this is literally the most excited you could be about acting. Like, I'm just starting and it's going well. Like, I love it. It's another story of like 30 years from now. You're like, yeah, all right, well, I guess I could use a boat. Whatever, I'll make this. Like then you might understand it better and be like, oh no, I totally get why he or she made that.
Yeah.
But until then, yeah, of course you're gonna notice it. And even like just for you, like when you saw the movie for the first time, when you saw the flight attendant, like is it weird to watch yourself? And then how does it work? Because even just like technically, you've seen those scenes, but from the opposite. Like anytime the camera's pointing at you, you're used to looking the opposite way. So everything must also seem like a little off. You're like, I don't remember that looking like that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because flight attendant, there was no playback on set. And playback is something that I'm pretty into. And it's something that I sort of became into whenever Ron sort of pushed me to watch playback. Is he said, make sure that you're sort of understanding how what you're doing is translating on camera, and that was some personal advice that he directed towards me. Is he said, that's sort of like what he would do most of the time is sort of making sure that what you're doing is translating the proper way. Because obviously, Amy and Glenn, they sort of have their own unique approaches. And I don't really see them watching playbacks too much, but that was something that I was really into. So the first time that I watched Hillbilly Elegy, it was almost like I was watching sort of cut together playbacks,
yeah.
Which was really, really interesting. But then the second time that I watched it, I watched it much more objectively and was much more focused on the progression of the story, and the actual way that it was sort of intended to tell the story rather than, watching it for performance and whatnot. And then the flight attendant, we didn't have playback on set. So I never saw any playback. So it was a lot stranger for me to see myself on camera during the flight attendant than it was the first time that I watched Hillbilly Elegy, for sure, just because I had no idea really how what I was doing was translating.
Yeah, you're just trusting that it's going well.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when Ron Howard tells you like that, you're like, oh, there's a reason he's telling me. He's not just like throwing a random bit of like, this is a wise comment. He has a reason for doing it. But yeah, because you may not realize like, oh, I don't know what to do with my hands or something like that. So I'm always putting them here. And he would point, he can point out like, yeah, that's great. But when the camera goes here, like you're looking, like it doesn't look right. So, be aware of that. It's just something you would never have thought about, which is, a good thing to have because like you said, you're going to be on projects that won't have it. So you'll have the tool in the back of your head of like, okay, I need to also remember, walk to this spot, say my line, looking at this person, not looking at all the like basic stuff that but then also whatever you wouldn't have been in your head. Like it's a good tool, put you ahead of the curve.
For sure. I mean, and I sort of knew that. I mean, going into the project is that sort of every little bit of advice that Ron had to give me, whether it was intended to be advice or just, something that he was saying in passing, I made sure to sort of make a mental note of it. And I guess sort of hone in on it. And that's sort of what I did. I mean, every day coming on the set is I made myself this just sort of sponge for knowledge, and for anything that Ron or Amy or Glenn had to offer me, just because they were, dripping with actor and director advice and critiques that they could give me. And it was so important for me to stay flexible during shooting of that, just for that sole purpose of being on top of my game, so that way I could sort of keep up the best I could.
Awesome. Yeah, and just as we wrap up, just with all the extra time and being sort of in the industry now, and like obviously, scripts come your way and projects, like have you just had time to watch things? Like, is there anything that you just caught up on that you enjoyed? Like, as you're worrying about Hillbilly, and as you're waiting for the flight attendant premiere, are you also still like, oh shit, I hope I see Tenet? Just like things that like normally you'd be excited about. Like, do you still make time for that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been sort of a moviegoer ever since I was a little kid. I mean, that's one of the things I just got done talking to my dad about that actually, is that I think no matter, no matter how big this whole thing gets, I'm never ever ever going to stop going to the movie theaters. Is that's something that I'm never ever ever going to stop doing just because I love going to watch movies. I mean, there's so many, I mean, there's more than two handfuls of movies that I've gone to see since the shutdown has happened, whether it's watching movies, in my den or something like that, or watching them at the movie theater since we've had, the socially distanced thing open back up.
Oh, yeah, you guys are lucky. You still have some of
Yeah.
the theaters that are open. What was the last movie you saw in a theater?
What was the last movie that I saw in the theater? I think, I mean, yeah, I think the actual last one is I saw Hillbilly Elegy, with a family friend of mine. But prior to that, I saw a rerun of Saving Private Ryan.
Oh,
That's what
nice.
is they were showing reruns of a bunch of movies. And I saw
Yeah,
some.
that seemed to be like a lot of theaters we're doing now. Like I'm in New York, so we don't have theaters. So I haven't been in a theater since February, or maybe
Yeah,
March. And it was Bloodshot, so I'm eager to like maybe watch a slightly better one in the theater eventually. But
yeah,
but yeah, it's weird how you miss it. Whereas like for me, going 2, 3, 4 times a week as a critic, sometimes you're just like, ugh, like not that you don't like it, but that getting off your ass sometimes is hard. And like I gotta travel an hour into the city and it's cold and I'm hungry and like there's other this person smells whatever nonsense is in your head. You know you at the time you're like, ugh, I could just be at home. Now when you're at home long enough, like honestly, it's not the end of the world to watch them at home. But you start to miss that, like, well, I can't pause it, or I can't get up to get a drink, or I'm not checking my phone, like all the little bits that, you know, you
yeah,
probably weren't doing when you watch something you like love for the first time. Like, your best movie experiences, whether it was in a theater or at home or like whatever, you were engaged because it was probably the first time you were watching Star Wars or the first time you were watching like something that you're like, I love this, I can't get enough of it,
yeah.
as opposed to like I'm watching it, but I'm also doing this and I'm looking over there, and it's harder to grab you.
Certainly. I mean, it's definitely two different experiences. I know, like the first time that I watched Hillbilly Elegy, I watched it in my den, and it was special, because it was the first time that I had seen it all put together. But the first time that I watched it in theaters was certainly a very different experience, to say the least.
Awesome. Well, it will not be the last time you see yourself in theaters, so that's a good thing to have. And it sounds like this is like the start of something very cool. So like I'm thrilled to be in on the ground floor. So when you're big and famous, you'll have to remember. But in the meantime, congratulations. There's a there's only a handful of performances by people in your age group every year, so it's especially when they're good, a light gets shined on them. So it's great when it's deserving. And like I'm in the Critics' Choice Association. We have a breakthrough category for people in your age group. So like I'm sure you're going to be in the conversation there. And it's got to be something very cool, and almost like, not that you want this because you like them, but it would kind of be funny if you got nominated but Glenn and Amy don't, just so you can like send that text and be like, so guys, I heard you guys are like Oscar nominees. What's up with this? Like, you guys
Yeah.
give me any advice for this? I don't know. Do you know anything about this?
I think I would get blackmailed pretty hard, pretty quickly.
Yeah, they would be like, "You're a child. Hang on. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
can we
No.
do one more take of the scene where I hit you?" You're like, "Oh, wait, never mind." Yeah,
Hey Ron, let's just do one more for keeps. Yeah.
yeah. They'll just send the message to Ron. He's like, "That's not what I taught him to do."
Yeah, right. No,
Though
yeah.
I do remember there was a story about him making Ransom
Yeah.
with Mel Gibson and Gary Sinise, and when he hadn't gotten nominated for Apollo 13, like that morning they were shooting, and Mel Gibson had gotten nominated for director, and Gary Sinise was asking for Ron about like direction about something. He's like, "So do you think I?" And he just pauses and goes, "The hell am I talking to you for?" He turns to Mel and goes, "Like, what do you think I should do in the scene?"
Yeah.
So like you need to have that moment of being able to be like, "Well, I'm the one who got an award this year," like,
Yeah.
just to have that. Just send them a picture of it when it happens and be like,
Yeah, right.
you
Hey
know,
guys.
yeah. They're going to be like, we're neither male nor children, so we're not going to get the Breakthrough Award. Congratulations. But still, you know, just to have that would be fun. But again, like, congratulations on this, and you should take a lot of pride in it. And especially like with a movie that has such big names that you're one of the things people are most excited about when talking about it. That's going to serve you well going forward.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. I mean, you said a mouthful. I really, really, really appreciate all that. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Congratulations again, and hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Definitely. That'd be awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep. No problem.
Awesome. Cool. Let me stop the recording now.
That was awesome. Thanks, Joey.
Not a problem. I was about to say, now you can say all your racist stuff. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Now the fun stuff begins. No. No, congratulations. This is great. And seriously, like there's not like, the critics group is not super imaginative when it comes to like the young person's category. So like, I wouldn't be shocked if it happens for you guys.
From your mouth to God's ear.
Well, I mean, I'm one of like 400 votes, but still, there's it helps when it's a movie that they're already looking at, as opposed to like, like Enola Holmes or something, or like, sure, like she's good and like she's young, but I don't know that they're caring about it in the same way. So like, who knows? Like, not to like tell you like for sure, but I have a good feeling, especially, it's Netflix. So there's no lack of like reminders that the movie exists.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'm just so I really am just so thankful for the entire situation. I mean, I'm just sort of shocked that things played out the way that they did, because I knew that I shot the movie, obviously, and I knew that it was going to come out sometime, but I really had no idea that, it would sort of feel like this, just because I'd never really sort of experienced anything like this before,
Well, in your defense, no one has, so that helps.
Yeah.
Everyone's going through this for the first time. And Netflix is kind of the only game in town, so it helps to be sort of there.
Yeah. I mean,
but yeah. Awesome. Congratulations again. I'm sure you got other stuff to do and don't need to be talking to me. So
actually, I have to go take the trash out and bring wood in for the fire. So
there you go.
It's short time.
There you go. Go for it, man.
Yeah.
Congratulations.